Do I have the brass bollocks to do strongest man on earth? No.
No.
Absolutely fucking not.
The other day I posted a Q&A on my Instagram, and we're going to go through some of the questions with Mr. Luke R. Some are for me, some are for Luke R, and we'll just go through the questions. With the format of World's Strongest Man and the duration of the total event, what's different during the actual competition, if anything? Feel like Shaw a few years ago said he would actually lift between days for maintenance. That's interesting if Brian Shaw used to do that.
It's a bold strategy,
Yeah, it's a bold strategy.
It was like a 2-week comp now.
Is that what it used to be?
Yeah, it used to be.
Oh, okay.
It used to be Heat's full fucking week off, I think.
Oh, okay, that'll make sense. Yeah, well, this year's Worlds is different to last year's because it's 4 days on the trot, so nothing is. You're not going to be lifting between quick night session.
Yeah.
What's different during the actual competition? From I've only been once, but my experience of it is it's quite mentally and socially draining for the athletes. Is what I noticed, because let's say you get into the final, you've got, well, last year there was a day break in between, so it was like 5 days, but you've got 4 days on the trot where you're kind of competing early morning, afternoon, and then later on, and then you're going back having to eat or whatever, sleep, boom, same thing again for a couple of days on the trot. You've also got like athlete interviews. There's just a lot going on, isn't there? There's just a lot, and also like if you leave your athlete tent to go for a walk out somewhere between the events because you've got a couple of hours, there's obviously strongman fans there. It's just like a lot on. Whereas at like a Giants live show, you just like in, compete, boom, done. And then it hits you like the next day, the kind of all the fatigue. Whereas Worlds, it's like it seems socially draining, and that was one of the things I noticed last year with like Matt Ragg, for example. He didn't have that like go in the final because he was just drained from.
I feel like a natural introvert as well.
Yeah,
it's probably like the worst thing ever to just be like constantly.
Yeah, so like your social I'm like it as well. My social battery gets like drained, and I feel like fucked for days, and I can imagine that's what it feels like for the athletes. So that's my experience of what would be different. And obviously you've what was it like for you when you?
I mean, when we did it, it was obviously a different comp, because the year that I did it was actually 4 days in a row, but it was 4 days in a row because there was a hurricane that cancelled it on day one, and then we lost a day of rest.
Right.
Now that was a bit unique because that was like they didn't know what they were going to do. Like it was like, right, well, we're doing it in a friggin' hurricane bunker now. Like you were supposed to do truck pulling, instead you're doing farmers for distance because
I can't remember this.
Yeah, because we're in a bunker.
Oh.
So obviously it was like they didn't know what they were doing with the events. They didn't know if it was going to have to be inside because there was a hurricane, or if they were able to do it outside. So we were only finding out the events and what time we needed to be up the next day at like midnight. And then it was like, right, I found out that I'm in group 1 who needs to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning at midnight, and I'm waking up now at 4:45 so that I can go and eat to then do the hardest day of competition.
Worlds is definitely a different challenge to any other show, isn't it?
Yeah, and I feel like Worlds is one of them where if you show up to there psychologically ready to compete, you can probably beat around 5 people who aren't. Like even if they're physically in better shape than you, if you show up and you're like every single day, like I'm here to fucking
that's what I mean. You've got every event, you've got to be like on it, and that's the key. Because you can't just switch it on for a couple of hours and hold it. You've got to switch on, switch off a little bit, switch back on.
I think as an athlete, knowing, like you said with the whole socialising thing, like I'd be like that. I'd be like, fuck, I'm burnt out. But then you also know, like, right, when I spend time with these people, it doesn't drain my social battery. It actually kind of like takes my mind off it.
Recharges you.
Yeah, like if I'm with like you lot or like Pa, like we're usually been dickheads and laughing about something. At which point I'm not thinking about the comp and I'm laughing and it's like fun. Whereas like if you have to like make effort to like small talk with some people that you don't, it's just you're better off going and like sitting in your room on your own, like so.
Because I think that's what someone said about Brian Shaw. I don't know if it's true that you would hardly see him.
I just disappear.
Yeah, just kind of like he was there for when he needed to perform, but other than that, he was kind of like hard to see because he'd obviously learned over the years how to get himself to stay up for the whole show. But I guess everybody's individually. You've got to learn how to go back.
Plus, we're in the novelty of what the war a long time ago as well.
Yeah.
I think the thing for Brian as well is that Brian was like every strongman's like strongman as well. Like when I'm showing up to Worlds, I'm like, oh my fucking god, that's Brian Shaw. Like I'm not going to be a torture, but he's probably had a generation of lads like the new blood coming through where it's like even when he's like not with fans, he's like Brian Shaw.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like a bit of a unique case, I imagine.
For Luke, curious what the experience is like coaching for MST, but also being coached by MST. Does Luke's approach differ from how Shane coaches you?
It's not really that weird at all, to be honest. Like, I'd say me and Shane are good friends now. Like, obviously, we've worked together for a long time, and Shane actually, I asked Shane if he'd want to do some stuff after I tore my lat off. Basically, I was like, I'm on my ass financially. You have a really good and successful business, it seems, running itself. Would you like to do some seminars? Would you like to do some of this and that? Basically, we could do some stuff together to try and pull some money. And he was like, oh, like, why don't you like come on as a coach? Because I think you'd already brought maybe Charles on at that point. So there was, you were branching out a little bit more, weren't you?
I was winging it a bit at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, well, whatever. So I ended up fucking there anyway.
Yeah.
And it's turned out to be really good for me because obviously I think detaching me personally from people inquiring about coaching gives me better clients.
Yeah, you get like proper, like I really like giving you open weight strongman clients. So
Yeah.
you kind of get your, you kind of get to the lifestyle you're living and the things you're doing every single day. You get to kind of like pass.
And then regarding like, is it weird to be coached by? Do I do anything different? Well, I think Shane's very intelligent when it comes to programming, and most of the stuff that I've learned has been like picked up from Shane. So whenever I program someone, I'm almost programming it as if Shane is programming for me.
Yeah, but also I want all my coaches to use my system, but put their own little unique flair on it, but stick to the core concepts of it. So it's always going to be slightly different. And also you get to build a relationship with the client, and you'll just learn that, oh, this thing that I usually do isn't actually working, so I'll slightly learn to adjust it, and it goes into its own flow anyway, always. So yeah, I guess it's always going to be similar-ish but different. It's
everyone has like their unique flair, like certain things they like. But
so my core principles that I really look for at MST is being, well, first of all, I think everyone goes through a kind of journey in strongman. So it's, as a coach, you need to like look at where the athlete is at the time of coming to you. Do they need to be spamming events and building the groundwork of skill and really being specific with, you know, the sport and practicing, actually doing certain movements and mastering them? And then once they get kind of past that stage, it's learning, right, when do they not need to do that as much, and when do we need to focus more on structural balance and keeping them healthy and stuff, and just kind of like transitioning through. It's like periodizing over 10 years basically. It's like Luke now isn't going to train like he did when he first started strongman, but if somebody comes to Luke who's in that kind of young stage that he was when he first started with MST, Luke's not going to make him train like you do now. You're going to learn where he's at and put him at the right periodized plan for the time frame that athlete is in. And that's kind of the skill as a coach, is learning when to give people the correct things. So there's a lot of core principles, but it's really like learning which ones to apply at what time is the key. And capitalising on certain things, like if someone's young and can recover and they're a bit mad, let them off the leash a little bit, let them be a bit mad and train crazy. But then when you see it getting a bit too much, that's when it's like, okay, we're reining that back now, we're being more sensible.
The things I've learned from Shane mainly, and I think it's actually worked quite well with having the surgeries, unfortunately, and then working with physios, and then working with Shane, is actually how to structure blocks and just when to push, what exercise to push, how does a prep look when these kind of events are in it. It's almost like you run diagnostics on someone as well. So how do they look overall in terms of a strongman? Where are they bleeding out the most points in the strongman competition if they're healthy and that's a priority? But then if they're not healthy, how do we get them into a state of kind of where they're able to actually be strong and be safe? So I think it's dissecting the athlete, picking out the components that need to be brought up, and then structuring a program around basically facilitating them getting to being an all-round, well-rounded, healthy athlete who's able to sustain the training and perform well at comps, and just kind of like not yeah, you just kind of like take apart the puzzle, don't you? Find the pieces that kind of need a bit of work,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
put it back together, don't you?
Because I just believe that strongmen get into the same ditch, really. If you just keep training the sport-specific stuff for like 5, 6, 7 years, they all end up in the same little ditch. So it's like learning to be like, oh, actually, we need to pull this back. Wait there, you little shit! Ah! He's getting me. Oh,
Yeah,
I've just riled him on more. He's the little fucker. You're distracting, lad. Probably biting my toes. And you smell it.
Do you just want to be part of the video?
God.
Yeah, I think it's just always having the bigger picture in mind when you like. Doing
Yeah,
something
exactly.
to someone.
Yeah. Can't just look at the comp in 8 weeks. You've got to look at
Yeah.
like what's going to happen in the next.
And
2
I've
or 3
become
years.
really fucking good at reloading people.
Yeah.
And rehabbing people from surgery. Yeah. Unfortunately. Do I have the brass bollocks to do strongest man on earth? No. Absolutely fucking not. I hope that's not offensive, isn't it? It's like I have the brass bollocks to have 5 surgeries and still do strongman, but I don't have the brass bollocks to risk my career for like 20 grand, probably best case scenario.
It's a tough set of events, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like for me, unless you're winning that comp and you're getting paid like 150 grand, you are literally gambling your entire career. Like for me, that's the thing. You've got to be realistic. At this, I'm not saying I'd never do strongest man on earth, and I'm not saying.
Yeah, I just think timing wise, especially like
Because I think that I quite like the idea of the comp, and I think that it actually suits me pretty well. But I think I'd have done strongest man on earth in previous years when the events haven't been. This is the maddest it's ever been this year. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's like best case scenario for me, been realistic this year. I come 5th, 4th, maybe, and it's like, well, what's that like?
The thing about
20
strongest man on
grand?
earth that bothers me the most when I think about it, it's not actually the comp, it's the training for the comp, because
Yeah.
it's not that some comps, I always talk about being really prepared and being able to do a couple of week prep and just rock up and do the shows, but that's mainly thinking about things like Giants Live. Whereas the strongest man on earth, you need to be safe at that show, you need gradual exposure to the stuff, and then that means that you've got more frequency of risk.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a sketchy show. As a coach, as a fan, if I was just watching it, I'd be like, yeah, I'll watch that.
I will watch it and I'll be like, this is a
but
class comp.
Training for it, when I think about coaching them for it, it gives me anxiety.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like when you think of every time you do a session like that, it's a roll of the dice, and if you roll the dice enough, your numbers come up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, to me, there's like 7 events in that comp where you're rolling the dice, and
yeah, like the yoke carry, for example. It's like if you weren't doing that show, you'd never do that training for it. You know what I mean? You'd never just.
I've never walked into the gym and thought, do you know what? I just really want to put like 700 kilo on my back today.
Yeah, you just would never do it, you know. And then also the amount of events that are like they accumulate the fatigue in similar areas, like power stairs, that little pull on the
Max
bicep,
Atlas stone, arm over arm on the heaviest arm over arm ever.
Tire flip, like all these little things on your bicep. It's not just about going to the show and doing it. It's like, well, I've got to do a couple of training sessions on all these.
And I know Andra really wants to do that show, and I think that if Andra performs I Should at World, he might get invited, and I'm a bit like, oh, Andre, you're 23, and I, do you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure he'd be fine. Like,
yeah, I'm just remembering he's young enough and resilient enough that you can be like,
but do you know, he just like
a bit more safe with him.
Do you know where like he's kind of like my high potential baby?
Yeah,
and I'm like, don't throw it all away. Like this. But yeah,
he'll do it like absolutely finally.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
I'm just like a really anxious mum, like, basically. Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I don't have the brass balls.
We're scared of strongest man on earth. If you could box one strong man,
leave it.
What was the best exercise you used to rebuild your hamstring back to normal after your injury?
Assisted Nordics were class. I think anything seated hamstring was really good as well. And then, just like RDLs. Yeah. Kind of what you'd expect, really. I think the Nordics were a good one because they feel so ropey. Because obviously,
I imagine that's the exercise that's the one that's like although you did it on a deadlift, you're basically like putting it under maximum tension. And, so.
Yeah, like I absolutely like assisted Nordic's been heavily on assisted because.
So this is on the machine that you can add the weight
Atlantis,
to.
Like, do not have a proximal high hamstring repair and then try and do.
Don't just put a band on that you don't know.
Because you'll tear your hamstring off.
Yeah. But the assisted Nordic machine is really.
Yeah, I started with like 80 kilo of assistance or something like so.
Yeah, so you can just super easy linearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favourite deadlift accessory?
I really like RDLs now. I actually think that anything RDL is one of the best accessories for just strongman in general.
Yeah.
But for me personally as well, I think what used to be a massive one for me was leg press. Yeah. Leg press used to carry over to my deadlift just because of the style of puller I am. Leg press is a big one for me. But RDLs, for me personally, because I actually lack posterior chain strength really, and I think so much of strongman is like hinging, lower back, hip extension, and I think RDL just ticks so many boxes for so many events without training them. That if you got really good at an RDL, you're probably going to get back on like most things.
Yeah, and also I'm a big fan of programming. Well, previously I used to always make sure that my athletes went through like a triphasic block on deadlift, or at least once a year, because on the deadlift you kind of drop through the eccentric, and you also don't really have an isometric at any point during the pull. Whereas nowadays I don't really run that block with anyone anymore. I just RDL frequently with people because it just ticks all. If you look at like your different strength cycles as well, it's not only carrying over to all those events. It's like eccentric strength, but you have to absorb and redirect the force during the movement. So you're getting isometric and eccentric strength through that hinge pattern as well. So then you never have to worry about, do I have an eccentric strength deficit in my pull that I need to do an eccentric block for, because you're just constantly training eccentrically through the RDL. And I also think that it just builds a lot of resilience and endurance in your pull. And well, the way I program, I use program for more volume, more reps. So if you're used to doing 10s or whatever on your RDL, you have that capacity to rep higher if you had a lighter deadlift for reps as well, without having to then change your deadlift training program. You just have a high rep accessory in through the hinge. So it ticks like so many boxes that I just think, it's just ideal. If you like that video, click here to watch us break down Luke's training for the World's Strongest Man events.